How did a simple cup of coffee, something your grandpa brewed for a dime, turn into a $100 billion global empire? And how did one guy, a poor kid from the projects, become the undisputed king of it all? We're about to spill the tea, or, the coffee, on Howard Schultz and Starbucks. Because the story of Starbucks is more than just burnt beans and bad Wi-Fi. It's a wild ride of ambition, marketing genius, and a few massive fumbles. Stick around, because the real secret to his success is a name you'll never guess. The $4 cup. Alright, let's get one thing straight. Howard Schultz did not invent Starbucks. He didn't even invent the idea of a fancy coffee shop. Not even close. The year is 1981. Howard is a 9-year-old salesman at a Swedish plastics company called Hammerplast. He's slinging plasticware and drip coffee makers. It's a living, but it's not exactly glamorous. He's good at it, but he's basically a real-life Glengarry Glen Ross character just trying to close the next sale. He notices something weird in his sales data. This tiny little company in Seattle, a city nobody cared about yet, is ordering a ton of his plastic coffee makers. More than anyone else. This tiny company was called Starbucks Coffee, Tea, and Spice. So he does what any good salesman does. He gets on a plane. He flies to Seattle, which at this point is all flannel and rain, long before it was grunge and Amazon. He walks into the original Starbucks store at Pike Place Market, and the first thing that hits him is the smell. It's not the smell of burnt coffee, like we know today. It's the smell of real coffee. These guys were roasting beans in the store. He meets the owners, and they're what we would now call coffee snobs. They're purists. They're talking about Sumatran beans and French roasts and the art of the pour-over. Howard is fascinated. He takes a sip of their coffee, a Sumatran blend, and it's a revelation. He's been drinking Diner Swill his whole life, and this was something else. He's so impressed that he basically begs them for a job. He takes a massive pay cut from a high-flying New York sales job at $75,000 a year to be their director of marketing for way less money. His mom thought he was insane, but Howard saw something. He just didn't know what it was yet. The epiphany in Milan. A year later, in 1983, the company sent him on a work trip to Milan, Italy. This was his aha moment, the thunderbolt. He lands in Milan, and looking for a coffee, he walks into an espresso bar, and it changes his life forever. He sees the barista working the espresso machine like a concert pianist. He's chatting with customers, he knows their names, he's pulling shots, he's steaming milk. It's not just a transaction, it's a performance. And the people? They're all standing at the bar, talking, laughing, arguing. It's loud, it's chaotic, it's a community. These espresso bars were on every corner, and they weren't just places to get a caffeine fix. They were the center of social life. Howard has his second revelation. He realizes Starbucks has it all wrong. They were selling beans. They were treating coffee like a commodity, like dry goods. The Italians, they were selling an experience. They were selling romance, they were selling community, and they were selling it for dollars a cup, not pounds of beans. He flies back to Seattle, his hair on fire. He storms into the office and tells the founders, "I've seen the future. We are not in the bean business. We are in the people business. We need to build espresso bars. We need to create this. Hey, this vibe." And the founders, they hated it. The hipsters who fumbled the bag. You have to understand who the original Starbucks founders were. Jerry Baldwin, Zev Siegel, and Gordon Bowker. They were academics. They were purists. They were the original hipsters. They loved coffee. They didn't care about community or experience. They wanted to sell the best, most perfectly roasted beans on the planet. To them, an espresso bar was a distraction. It was loud. It was messy. It was low-brow. They didn't want to be in the fast food business. Howard, our ambitious sales guy, is crushed. He tries to convince them. He begs them. He sets up a tiny little espresso bar in the corner of one of their stores just to prove the concept. And it's a smash hit. People are lining up. They're making more money from that one little corner than from the rest of the store combined. And the founders still said no. They literally told him, "We don't want this." They saw the future and they actively rejected it. They were purists. Howard was a capitalist, and this was the fundamental divide. So, in 1985, Howard does the only thing he can. He quits. He walks away from the company he loves because he has this vision burning in his gut that he knows is right. This is a huge moment. He's got a wife, he's got a young kid, and he's walking away from a stable job to chase a dream that his bosses, the supposed experts, told him was stupid. This, right here, is the moment the $100 billion company was really born. Not in the first store, but in the moment Howard walked out of it. The test kitchen. Howard isn't just a dreamer though, he's a salesman, he's a hustler. He decides, fine. If they won't do it, I'll do it myself. He decides to open his own chain of Italian-style espresso bars. He calls it Il Giornale, which translates to the newspaper. It's going to have the opera music, the baristas in bow ties, the whole Milan vibe. There's just one problem. He has no money. He needs $1.7 million to get this thing off the ground. In 1985, for a guy with no collateral, trying to sell a concept nobody in America understands, it was an impossible ask. He starts the long, humiliating process of pitching venture capitalists. And he gets rejected. And rejected. And rejected again. He pitched over 242 people. He got 217 no's. Think about that. 217 times. People in suits told him he was crazy. Why would anyone pay $2 for a cup of coffee when they can get it for 50 cents at a diner? He was selling a vibe, and these guys only understood spreadsheets. He's on the verge of giving up. He's depressed. He's running out of options. But he keeps grinding, and eventually, he finally scrapes together the cash. In 1986, Il Giornale opened its doors. And it worked. People loved it. He was right. The concept was sound. He opened a second store, a third. He proved the experts wrong. And then, in 1987, the phone rings. It's the Starbucks founders. They want to sell. Turns out, they were really good at selling beans, but they'd expanded too fast and were struggling. They wanted out. They wanted to focus on their other coffee company, Peet's Coffee, which they had also bought. They offered to sell Howard the entire Starbucks company, the 6 stores, the roasting plant, the name, everything, for $3.8 million. Howard's dream was back. But there was, again, one problem. He didn't have $3.8 million. The third place hustle. Howard is running Il Giornale, but the Starbucks deal is the white whale. He has to buy it. This is his destiny. So he goes back to his investors, the people who just gave him money for Il Giornale. He tells them what he needs, $3.8 million, as soon as possible. It's an audacious, almost insane-sounding plan. But Howard had proven the concept. He wasn't just a crazy salesman with a dream anymore. He was a guy running a successful business. He gets the money. But we'll come back to how he got it, because that's a mind-blowing story in and of itself. In 1987, Howard Schultz officially buys Starbucks. He merges it with Il Giornale. He now has 11 stores, and he is finally in the driver's seat. This is where he unleashes his big idea. The one he'd been holding on to since that trip to Milan. He calls it the third place. It's a simple concept. Your first place is home. Your second place is work. So what if Starbucks could be your third place? It wasn't just a coffee shop. It was a destination. It was a place for a coffee break that wasn't your sad office kitchen. It was a place to meet a friend. A place to read a book. A place to feel alone, together. This right here was the billion-dollar idea. And he wrapped it all in a brilliant, slightly fake Italian package. He's the one who came up with the Italian names. Grande, Venti, Macchiato. It's gibberish. Venti means 20, for 20 ounces. It has nothing to do with Italy or the Italian language. It's a marketing gimmick. It was designed to make you, the customer, feel sophisticated, to feel like you were part of an exclusive club. He was selling $2 of milk and coffee for $4 and throwing in $10 of sophistication and community for free. And America ate it up. The Brooklyn Project's origin story. So, where does this relentless, almost maniacal drive come from? Why was this guy so obsessed with building a company that took care of people? For that, you gotta go back. Way back. Howard Schultz was not born rich. He wasn't middle class either. The Schultz family was poor. He grew up in the Canarsie housing projects in Brooklyn. These were real projects. Not the gentrified, oh so edgy, Brooklyn of today. This was the rough and tumble. 1,960 West Side Story, Brooklyn. His father, Fred Schultz, was a World War II veteran and a blue-collar guy. He worked a series of dead-end jobs: truck driver, factory worker, cab driver. The one Howard always talks about is his job as a diaper service delivery driver. When Howard was 7 years old, something happened that scarred him for life. His dad, while working, slipped on a patch of ice and broke his hip and his leg. And in 1960, if you were a blue-collar guy and you got hurt, that was it. No workers' comp, no health insurance, no disability. You got hurt, you got fired. Howard remembers his father, a big, strong man, lying on the couch in a full leg cast, unemployed, defeated. The phone was ringing off the hook with collection calls. There was no money, no food. His father had lost his job, his income, and his dignity. Howard, at 7 years old, felt that shame. He felt the helplessness of a system that could break a hard-working man and throw him away. That is the fire. That is the wound that Howard Schultz has spent his entire life trying to heal. He swore to himself that if he was ever in a position of power, if he ever ran a company, he would never treat his employees like that. He would build the kind of company his father never got to work for. A company that offered dignity. This is why, from the very beginning, Schultz did something that Wall Street thought was financial suicide. He offered full healthcare benefits to part-time employees. In 1988, long before it was fashionable, he gave baristas who worked just 20 hours a week full, comprehensive health, dental, and vision insurance. He called them partners, not employees. In 1991, he introduced the Bean Stock Program, giving every single employee, even the part-timers, stock options. He was basically making every barista a part owner of the company. Wall Street hated it. His investors told him he was insane. You're going to destroy the company. The margins. Think of the margins. At one point, his healthcare costs were more than his coffee bean costs. But Howard wouldn't budge. This was non-negotiable. This was about his dad. This was about that broken leg on the couch in Canarsie. He was building a fortress of security, one part-time barista at a time. And, ironically, it became his single greatest competitive advantage. He had the lowest employee turnover in the entire fast food industry. The 90 seconds montage, so he's got the concept, the third place, and he's got the soul. Now, he just needs to expand. And boy, did he. The 1,990 seconds were the music video montage of Starbucks' life. They went public in 1992 with 165 stores. From there, it was just a blur. The company became a cultural icon. It was the backdrop for every 90 seconds movie and TV show. In You've Got Mail, it's where Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan meet. In Friends, they worked at a fake Starbucks called Central Perk. In Austin Powers, Dr. Evil's big evil lair is just a Starbucks. Starbucks wasn't just a coffee shop anymore, it was a status symbol. Walking around with that white cup with the green siren logo was a new form of flex. It said, I'm busy, I'm sophisticated, I'm part of the new, globalized, caffeinated economy. Schultz's strategy was ubiquity. He wanted a Starbucks on every corner, sometimes on both corners of the same intersection. The joke was that you could stand on a corner in Manhattan, and a new Starbucks would open in the time it took for the light to change. By the year 2000, they had over 3,500 stores. By 2007, they had over 15,000. The stock was a rocket ship. A $1,000 investment in that 1992 IPO would be worth, well, a lot. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. Howard Schultz was a hero. He was the golden boy of conscious capitalism. He was the poor kid from the projects who had built a $100 billion company that also gave healthcare to its baristas. He was a billionaire. He had won. And then, in 2000, at the peak of his success, he stepped down as CEO. He figured the company could run itself. He kicked himself upstairs to be the chairman. And that was a huge mistake. The 2008 apocalypse. From 2000 to 2007, Starbucks slowly but surely lost its soul. The new leadership was obsessed with growth, but they forgot why. They were spreadsheet guys. They wanted to make the stores more efficient. So they got rid of the big, loud, romantic Italian espresso machines that Howard had loved. Why? They were too tall. The baristas couldn't make eye contact with the customers. No, that's the PR spin. The real reason is they were too slow. They replaced them with automated push-button machines, the kind you see today. They're fast, they're clean, and they are utterly, completely soulless. Then they started selling stuff, not coffee. They sold CDs. They sold teddy bears. They sold sandwiches. And the sandwiches. Oh, the sandwiches. They started heating them up in the stores. And suddenly, the Starbucks experience wasn't the smell of coffee. It was the smell of burnt cheese. Howard, who was still on the board, was disgusted. He wrote a famous, scathing memo in 2007 that got leaked to the press. He said the company was guilty of the McDonaldization of Starbucks. He said the stores had become sterile, that they'd lost the romance and theater of the coffee. He was right. And then, 2008 hit. The global financial crisis. The housing bubble burst. Lehman Brothers collapsed. And suddenly, people did not have $4 to spend on a cup of coffee. For the first time in its history, Starbucks' sales tanked. The stock price fell off a cliff. It plummeted by 75%. Wall Street was writing the company's obituary. The company was broken. The third place was a third-rate experience. The return of the king. In January 2008, in a move that shocked the business world, Howard Schultz pulled a Steve Jobs. He came back. He fired the CEO and retook the reins of the company. And he was on a warpath. His first move? He did something so dramatic, so costly, that his board thought he had lost his mind. On the 26th of February 2008, at 5:30 p.m., Howard Schultz shut down every single one of his 7,100 stores in the United States. All at once. He put a sign on the door that said, "We're taking time to perfect our craft." For 3.5 hours, he forced 135,000 baristas to retrain. To learn how to pull the perfect espresso shot. To learn how to steam milk again. It was a $6 million stunt. The media called it a PR gimmick, but Howard knew what he was doing. He wasn't just retraining his baristas, he was sending a message. He was telling the world, and more importantly, telling his company, that Starbucks was going back to basics. They were a coffee company again, and he was ruthless. He shut down 900 underperforming stores. He laid off thousands. He cut costs. But the things he didn't cut? He didn't cut employee healthcare, and he didn't cut the beanstalk. He saved the company. He brought it back from the brink. The stock price, which had bottomed out at $4, would, over the next decade, climb to over $120. He had his second act. He wasn't just the founder. He was the savior. The $100 billion paradox. So, here we are today. Starbucks is a $100 billion behemoth with 38,000 stores. Howard Schultz has a net worth of about $3.8 billion. He did it. The kid from the projects built the company his dad never had. And then, it all got complicated. Because apparently, the guy who built his empire on taking care of partners has spent the last few years fighting those same partners. This is the great Starbucks paradox. Howard Schultz, the man who gave us part-time healthcare, also famously despises unions. When Starbucks stores in Buffalo, New York, became the first to successfully unionize in 2021. The company, with Schultz as the interim CEO, allegedly unleashed an anti-union campaign so aggressive it's been cited for hundreds of labor law violations. The company has been accused of firing union organizers, shutting down unionizing stores, and forcing employees into captive audience meetings to listen to anti-union propaganda. It's a bizarre look for the guy who wrote the book on conscious capitalism. It reveals the cognitive dissonance at the heart of the billionaire savior. He wants to give you benefits. He wants to be the benevolent father figure, the man from Canarsie who bestows healthcare upon you. But the moment you, the partner, decide you want a seat at the table, the moment you want to negotiate for those benefits, the fatherly mask slips. He sees it as a personal insult. He built this benevolent company for you, and now you're telling him it's not enough? It's a deep personal betrayal to him. The race together fiasco. This billionaire savior complex has led to some interesting fumbles. In 2015, Howard Schultz decided he wasn't just going to solve coffee, he was going to solve racism. He launched the Race Together campaign. The idea was to have baristas write "Race Together" on coffee cups and then start a conversation about race with the customer. That went about as well as you'd expect. Imagine, it's 7 a.m., you haven't had coffee, you're late for work, and the one 9-year-old barista you just want to hand you your latte is now supposed to engage you in a deep, nuanced discussion about 400 years of systemic oppression. It was, without a doubt, one of the most tone-deaf, cringe-worthy, and hilariously misguided corporate campaigns in modern history. The backlash was immediate and brutal. It showed a man who was so high up in his own C-suite, so surrounded by yes-men, that he had genuinely lost touch with reality. He thought you could solve a complex societal problem with a slogan on a paper cup. He tried it again in 2018. After a store manager in Philadelphia called the cops on 2 black men who were just waiting for a friend. The company was in crisis. Howard's solution? He shut down all 8,000 stores again. This time, for racial bias training. Another multi-million-dollar stunt. A good intention maybe, but it all stems from the same belief that all the world's problems can be solved by Starbucks, the ghost of presidential campaigns past. This all came to a glorious, terrible climax in 2019. Howard, having saved Starbucks twice, decided he had one more job to do. Save America. He announced on 60 Minutes that he was seriously thinking about running for president of the United States as a centrist independent. And the entire country, in a rare moment of bipartisan unity, collectively looked at this billionaire coffee mogul and said, no. It was a disaster. His announcement was met with boos in his own hometown. Liberals hated him because they thought he'd split the vote and re-elect Trump. Conservatives, well, they weren't buying what he was selling. He was the race together guy. He was the billionaire who thought he knew better than everyone. His campaign, if you can even call it that, was dead on arrival. It was a humiliating, public rejection. The world and the political system was telling him the same thing his baristas were. We don't want a benevolent king. We just want a damn cup of coffee. He quietly shut down his exploratory committee a few months later. The secret billionaire who bankrolled the dream. So, how did he do it? All of it? How did this kid from the projects, this salesman, this guy who got rejected 217 times, actually pull it off? We know he had the vision. We know he had the drive. But let's go back to 1987. He needed $3.8 million to buy Starbucks. A lot of money. He's running Il Giornale. He's got investors, but he's tapped out. He's desperate. He makes one last-ditch phone call. He calls a lawyer in Seattle, a guy he'd met once or twice, a guy named Bill Gates. No, not that Bill Gates. Bill Gates Sr., the father of the other Seattle billionaire. Howard goes to his office, a nervous wreck. He gives his pitch, explaining that he has this dream, this third-place concept, and that he knows this company can work. He lays it all out. He's short on cash. He needs the money to buy the Starbucks name because the founders are selling, and this is his one and only shot. Bill Gates Sr., a giant of a man, listens patiently, hearing the passion and seeing the vision. He acknowledges that it's a big risk, but tells Howard that he believes in him. Bill Gates Sr. didn't just give him legal advice. He got on the phone, he called his friends, he called his investors. He put his own reputation on the line for this young, fast-talking salesman. He helped Howard secure the final round of funding. But most importantly, he walked Howard down the street to the office of one of his own clients, a man who was skeptical but trusted Bill Sr.'s judgment. That man was his son, Bill Gates. Yes, a young, pre-Microsoft empire, Bill Gates was one of the original, last-minute investors who gave Howard Schultz the money to buy Starbucks, the entire $100 billion Starbucks empire. The third place, the healthcare, the burnt cheese, the race together, the presidential run, all of it was bankrolled, in its most desperate moment, by the father of the man who was building the other Seattle empire, Microsoft. It's a small world, isn't it? Especially at the top.